The 50 Podcast.
50 Podcast.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the 50 Podcast. Today I'm here with Angel Maysonet. Am I saying that right? Okay, well, I should say it with a New York accent, Angel Maysonet.
Maysonet.
Hey, Maysonet. He wore his Chicago PD shirt just for me. I should have worn my NYPD shirt, but I'm slacking. I have been wanting to talk to him forever. I've even invited him to go out and dinner with me when I've been in New York. So, I've been wanting to hang out with him. I'm a fan.
Thank you. The feeling's mutual.
Yeah, that you took the time out of your day to be here with me. You're so much cooler than me, so I really appreciate it. But I'm so excited to get to talk to you and for all my listeners to get to talk to you because I do have listeners that are a lot more new than older, but I have been getting a lot of messages from people who are struggling with retirement and stuff like that. And obviously I can't speak on that. So I think it'll be great to have you. So Angel is a retired NYPD detective. He was a part of the Joint Terrorist Task Force with the FBI. He's a corporate security manager. He just told me he has 3 offices in New York. I find that wild. He's a police advocate. He's a news media contributor. And that's how I originally found you. He's a public speaker and an outspoken social media personality. So for listeners who don't know who you are, you want to give them a quick bio and then we'll talk about everything we just talked about. But if you want to just tell us quick about you, where you grew up, and we'll go from there.
Okay. So I'm a Puerto Rican kid from the Bronx, born and raised in the Bronx, raised by a single mom. Went through it, was on welfare. We were homeless for a little while. Just went through it, right? It was her, myself, her, and my older sister. I became a police officer at the age of 21 with the NYPD. I went into the academy at the age of 21, actually turned 22 in the academy. That was, I joined June 30th, 1992, for all you young folks. Don't say anything. Don't say anything. Oh, God. I know. Thanks. Anyway, I went to the 48th, after the police academy, I went to the 48th precinct of Bronx. I did patrol there for the better part of 12 years, 8 of them on the overnight shifts, steady overnights, midnights. And then I went up to the squad, to the 48 Detective Squad in 2004. And then in 2007, I was lucky enough to be detailed out to the NYPD FBI Joint Terrorism Task Force in New York City, which is the biggest JTTF in the country. And retired in 2014. And then I went into the private sector. I was recruited by the private sector as an entry-level investigator for the Labor Relations Department. And I worked my way up. I went to school. I got my degree. And after almost 30 years of not being in school, I'm smarter than I look. And I ended up working my way up to the Department Manager of Investigations and Tactical Operations in one of the biggest utilities in New York. So here I am. That's me.
Now you're on my little old podcast. So thank you so much. So interesting, to hear all this extra stuff that I didn't know about you. So hopefully we can dive into that a little bit. So we're going to start with your foundation in law enforcement. So tell us about your life. My first question was, tell us about your family life and growing up in New York. You touched on it a little bit, but tell us a little bit more about growing up in New York.
Yeah. So again, right, Puerto Rican kid from the Bronx. We moved around a little bit. My mom and my dad separated when I was just about 4 years old. My dad really wasn't in my life growing up. My grandfather, who was he was a big advocate. I think it's where I get it. My mother says it's where I get it from. He was a politician. He was a big advocate. Yeah, he was a big advocate for the Democrats, believe it or not. Well, these were the Kennedy Democrats, right? It was a different time back then.
Yep.
He came from Puerto Rico when he was 11 years old by himself. He joined the Army. He was in the Merchant Marines. But they lived at the Patterson housing projects in the Bronx. So that was kind of my summer home, right? So I would go there in the summers and on the weekends and spend time with my grandfather and my grandmother. And he was very influential in my life as far as teaching me life lessons, because I really didn't have, my dad around as much My uncle Tom, may he rest in peace. My mother's brother, Thomas Forner Jr., as my grandfather was Thomas Forner. He was in my life as well, but he had battles with alcoholism, and substance abuse and stuff like that. So he ended up getting clean and sober, and then 35 years later, he ended up passing away because he was living on a liver transplant. He ended up passing away. But yeah, so I saw my mother go through it. Domestic violence. My father used to hit her. I remember that when I was a kid. I witnessed all that stuff growing up. I was constantly jumping in, trying to defend her. Those are some of my earliest memories as a child. And grew up, my mom tried to shelter me as much as she could because growing up in the Bronx, with a single mom, it was tough. I played football. I'm a big dude. I'm 6'5". I'm 280 pounds right now. And my heaviest when I was a detective in the Bronx eating pizza, tacos and stuff, I was probably 340 pounds. So I was a big boy. So I played football. I graduated high school when I was 16. I got skipped in school. Like I said, I'm smarter than I look. I graduated high school when I was 16. I went to a football camp. I got looked at by 2 major Division I schools to play football. But back then there were no HIPAA laws, and I had a major injury to my back. So they reneged, and I ended up becoming, a cop.
So when you chose to become a cop, after how you grew up and stuff, is that what inspired you to become a cop in the first place? Was it how you grew up, or did it just kind of land on your plate?
So it was my mom actually. So she was a crossing guard, right, for the NYPD. We lived in a 4-6 precinct at one time around 183rd and Morris Avenue, which is a bad area. She was a crossing guard. She ended up becoming a police administrative aide for the NYPD, and she worked at One Police Plaza at headquarters for a time. So I was around that when I was a kid. Sometimes I would go with her to work. It's funny because I was talking to her about this the other day. I still remember her office number, the number that I used to call.
Oh, wow.
I would get home from school. I still remember it was 21237. It was 2123745,000. I remember like it was yesterday. And so she was a police administrative, and then when she married my stepdad, he wanted, he was machismo. He wanted her to take care of her, yada yada yada. So she quit. But that exposed me. She had a boyfriend who was a police officer. He was a good man. He was good to me. And it exposed me to that. Plus, my grandfather being in the Merchant Marines and in the Army, he had a big respect for the uniform, right? His thing was, you could be a janitor, you could be a fireman, a paramedic, a police officer. If a person has a uniform, they deserve respect because they're making an honest living. So, the job came around. At the time, all you needed was a high school diploma. When I graduated high school and I didn't get the scholarship to play football, I had to work to help my mother. So I was working. I didn't go to college on my own. I couldn't afford it. And then I became a what we call a square badge in New York. I was a security guard for a little while.
Okay.
At a shopping center in Yonkers called Cross County Shopping Center. I was a square badge there for a couple of years. No offense to the security guards because they don't go to work, but that's just kind of the slang we use. I became a security guard, and then in 1991, I took the police test. I did really well, and then I got hired June 30th, 1992, when you were 1.
Yeah, when I was 1. You were so young becoming a cop, 21 years old, and you live like this life where you're like working really hard, and then it's like you kind of it sounds like you didn't even get to well, I'm sure you still partied, but you kind of worked your whole life and then started working at such a young age, like where most of us didn't become cops like that young. Yeah. So do you feel like if someone's looking to become a cop, what age would you recommend them starting? Like, would you say just go right into it like you? Or now that you're reflecting back, would you have started a little bit later in life?
So I think I loved going in at the age of 21, right? I've been working, full disclosure, I've been working literally since I was 12 years old.
I see that.
Yeah, I worked at a clothing store on Fordham Road in the Grand Concourse. I used to go there after school. I would walk, there because I couldn't afford to take the bus. And I worked for this old Jewish man. I worked downstairs. He had like a communion baptism type store where they sold like dresses and little suits for kids. So I used to do the stock room. But to get back to the original question, 21 was a good age for me. I think nowadays, the fact that they have this college requirement to become a police officer, I think it's a waste. I think that they're leaving out a huge demographic of folks, of kids who grew up in the city, like myself, who couldn't afford to go to school, like myself, who were helping their parents, like myself. And I'm certainly not exceptional, right? There's a lot of kids out there that are like me. And they're kind of, leaving that demographic out, right? Because now you figure if you graduated 18 and you need 60 credits for the NYPD, let's say, and you're running around, messing around, you might drop out, you might go back. I mean, kids go through it.
Yeah,
right? It's
totally.
It's different. But I think that 25 is a good age nowadays. I think 25 is, you're responsible enough because obviously times have changed. I'm going to be 54 years old in September. Times have changed.
Yeah. I think it's interesting you say about the education because I was just talking today about it and I'm like a big advocate on education. But like hearing you say that, like from your point of view, it like kind of makes a lot of sense because you're right. Not everybody can afford it and you're missing a whole demographic and the departments mostly pay for it. So, yeah. I mean, I think that's a really valid point because I kind of felt like the opposite. But now that you're putting it in that perspective, it really makes sense because they could be great cops. They just can't afford the education of it.
Another way to look at it is like, look, if you have guys like me, right? Obviously, I passed the background check because I didn't get in trouble. So even though I grew up in the hood and I was around crack dealers and I was around stick-up kids and I was around kids that were doing stupid shit, I was always, I'm sorry, am I allowed to curse?
Oh, yeah, you can swear like, come on, yeah. Yeah,
right.
Hell yeah.
I stayed out of trouble. So I knew the streets, but I also kept myself, my mom kept me on the street narrow. So you have kids nowadays, right? Because, and I say it all the time, if you watch me on the when I do my news hits, 95% of the people in the hood are good people. They're just trapped. And that goes for the kids too. They're good kids. They just can't afford to get out of the hood. So they get wrapped up a lot of times in gangs and other shit. And the kids that stay out of trouble, for me, I feel like they deserve that shot to be a police officer because they know the hood. They look like the people they're policing. They speak like the people they're policing. They listen to the same music, the fashion. They know what's going on. The social media nowadays. I mean, we can go on and on.
Yeah, no, that's a really, really good point. Like, I've never heard anybody put it like that, but it makes sense because like some of the officers that I worked with in Chicago who were from like literally like born and raised where I worked. And I'd be like, you were born here? Like it would blow my mind because where I worked, it was bad. And they were like so respected and they got on people's levels. And I always was like, damn, like this is so necessary. Like we truly need this. Because if I went and I worked where I grew up, I'd blend in too. I would, but it's different. You need different people for different areas with different experiences and all that.
Yeah. And listen, we can't just I'm sorry, I mean to cut you off, but like, what happened to Tyree Nichols, right? You had 5 cops who were black and they beat him to death, right? So there's no absolutes, right? It doesn't mean that just because you're from the hood that you're not going to have that gangster mentality either. And now you're a gangster with a badge and a gun. So there's a thin line, and that goes into, the background checks, the low round of the standards, the vetting process, and, the standards now in policing that we've seen that have gone way down.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's a really good point. Out of all the units that you've worked in, what's been your favorite role or experience?
So my favorite, I say it all the time, my favorite time on the job was patrol. I loved being a patrol cop. I saw you when you and I first connected on social media, and I saw when you were in Chicago, how you used to get down with the kids and you were very, you had a lot of fun. That's the way I was, right? I would ride around and I would take the mic and put it to the radio, right? On a Saturday night, if I came into work at 11:30, and I would be blasting salsa music or freestyle music, and, people got a kick out of it. But at the same token, and people used to say it all the time, when the shit hit the fan and the people in the hood, they knew me. And when I showed up, I remember I had one time myself and my partner showed up at a dispute. And I remember it was on Webster and East Tremont. It was at a bodega. And we get in there and all hell's breaking loose. And this old man was sitting in the front and he looks at me and he says in Spanish, Kojak llegó, aquí llegó la policía. They used to call me Kojak. And they were like, he's like the real police here, and I took pride in that. You know,
Yeah.
because when I went to shit, I de-escalated it by my size, by my
100%.
professionalism. So I just loved patrol. It was great. You got down to the nitty gritty. You got to see kids grow up in the hood. You got to deal with people. You got to take them home as opposed to arresting them. You got to give people breaks.
Wow.
It was just great, and everything was different. And you were truly, at that time, there were no GPSs in the car. There were no body cams. There were no cell phones, right? We had beepers, right? So we were basically our own boss. You know, they gave you the keys to the RP. You had the keys to the kingdom, as they like to say. And we call police cars RP and NYPD. And we would go to work, right? And chase the radio all night. And I loved it.
Yeah, I love patrol. I don't mind it at all. Because every day is different. It's so fun. Like, especially for someone who is like a go kind of person, like can't really like settle down with one thing. Like, it's perfect.
Right.
Like, it's, did you have any, well, you probably didn't, but did you have any pushback from family or friends when you were on this career or like during certain times in this career?
Yes, I did. So now with the polarizing thing, the way politics are, right, in this world.
Yeah.
It's it's kind of come full circle for me, right? Because growing up in the hood, I had my friends that were like, yo, you're gonna be a cop. Like, there's no doubt about it. Because I was always the voice of reason, like, yo, don't do that. Like, let's stop doing this because we're gonna get in trouble. You know, my mother's gonna kick my ass. Your mother's gonna kick your ass.
And my mother's gonna kick your ass.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And most of us, we were raised by single moms. So we were boys running around doing stupid shit. And I was always the voice of reason, you know. But then there were other people, right? And even members of my family who were like, you know, police work is not honorable. I mean, it's the opposite, right? Police work's not honorable. You know, they abuse minorities. They're just going out there to just, you know, as like an invading army. And my argument was, hey, look, I'm joining the police department and I'm doing patrol literally 3 to 4 miles from where I grew up. So I speak the language. I know my people. I know the culture. But listen, you know, you can't make everybody happy. One thing about me is that I really don't give a shit what other people think about me. I mean, you know, to an extent, right? I mean, obviously I care about my parents, my kids, my wife, but overall, I don't give a shit what people think about me, which is why I'm such an advocate for police now. And I get dragged, and I know you do too, when I stick up for the cops, you know?
Yeah.
So, yeah, I got pushback, and I get pushback to this day now because of my political views.
Because of social media.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, to go back in your journey in policing, I meant to ask you this too. You worked, I'm assuming, you worked during 9/11. Can you tell us a little bit about that experience?
So, I had gone to do day tours at that point, and I was actually out sick. I hurt my back. I want to say on the 7th. And then my partner was working a day tour when the first plane hit. I got alerted that the first plane had hit. So now I'm like, all right, and I was living at the time 70 miles north in New York City, right? I was suburbs of New York in Orange County, New York. So jumped in my car, and as I'm getting dressed, getting ready to go.
Let me ask you this: you were hurt, but were you allowed to jump in your car? Or are you just doing this on your own? You're just doing this on your own, right?
Yeah, I called my lieutenant, and my lieutenant, may rest in peace, Larry Gallagher. He had the desk, and I called him up, and I'm like, boss, I'm coming in, I'm on my way. And he's like, no, you're not. Like, we're not authorizing you. You're not. And I'm like, okay, I'll see you in a bit. And boom, I hung the phone. So I jump in. I had a 1989 Nissan Maxima. It was a beautiful car. It was so fast. I get on the Palisades State Parkway. Well, as I'm getting dressed and after I call my lieutenant, the second plane hits.
Oh, wow.
So my daughter was 2 at the time. And my ex-wife was like panicking, and I'm like, look, I got to go. Kissed them goodbye, jumped in my car, and I headed down. So I got to the precinct. I started gearing up, and my Lieutenant Gago was like, I'm not letting you go. You're sick. You're hurt. If something happens to you down there, it's going to take 5 people to drag your big ass out of there. I'm not letting you go. So I'm standing there literally fighting with him, and now my partner's missing. He's nowhere to be found. So his wife is reaching out to me, and she's 7 months pregnant with his second child. My nephew Jason, I call my nephew. So she's calling me, and I'm speaking to her, and she's hysterical. I can't find Cito. I can't find his nickname is Cito. Can't find them. Whatever, crying. Nobody could find them. They weren't picking up the radio. The radios went dead. There was no communications.
Question, real quick. Did you guys have cell phones at this time or not?
Some of us did, but the majority of us did.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
The only thing that worked down there were the Nextels. I don't know if you remember the Nextel, the point-to-point.
Yeah, the little radio, like the
Yeah. There was a cell phone with like a radio on the side of it, that was the only thing that worked.
Okay.
So anyway, long story bearable. Finally, so I remember being in front of the precinct, and my precinct was about 3 miles from the George Washington Bridge. So the first plane came down the Hudson. So I remember when I get in my hair standing up with my arms just feet. I get to the precinct, and there's F-16 fighter jets like low, and they're like flying over my precinct back and forth. They're like doing patrols in the air. So I'm like, shit, like this is World War III, right? So finally I convinced my boss to let me go. I jump in a van, and I get there. I get down to ground. Everything had collapsed already. I get down to ground zero probably about 8:30 that night, right? And it's like Armageddon, right? I mean, there's and not to be disrespectful to the victims, the people that jumped, their bodies are squished. They're all over the place. There's, fire trucks, ambulances. You're hearing the beeping or the whistling of the firefighters, their locator devices, their transponders. It's just nuclear snow is the best way I can describe it. And it was just like, so my ex-wife worked at the World Trade Center. So I used to go pick her up when we were dating. So I remember going down, looking up to the sky, and it was gone. And I was like, it looked like there was a hole in the sky. That's essentially what it looked like. So in the interim, my partner made it back.
Oh,
and he was at a decomposition unit at Jacoby Hospital. They were like hosing them down and stuff.
Yeah.
And then we just started, I was down there 5-6 days a week, 12, 16 hours a day until May. So, from September. So
when you talk about it, and like even right now, like when you're saying like what you saw, like, can you picture it still in your mind, like perfectly?
It's so, yes. And it's emotional. So I lost a couple of guys, but there was one in particular, Sergio Villanueva. He was a cop. We were in the academy together. He was in my sister company. We were in a gym block together, and he was an amazing dude. He was Argentinian, born on the 4th of July. I mean, it was like a movie.
It was like the American dream.
Yeah, and he was born in Argentina, came here as a child, joined the NYPD. We were in the academy together. He was a clown, a complete ladies' man. He was a beautiful looking dude, like I could say it. Like, he was a gorgeous dude. And the last time I saw him was probably April of 2001. I was at the district attorney's office doing something, and somebody jumps on my back and is kissing me on my neck, and I'm like, and like I said, I'm a big dude, and Sergio wasn't that big, and I turn around and I'm like ready to strangle him, and he's like, "Big Daddy," because he called everybody Big Daddy.
Uh-huh.
And he's kissing me, and we're hugging, and I'm like, "Dude, what's up?" Like, so we start talking, and he's like, "Yeah, I'm going to FD. Me and my fiance are opening a candle shop in Astoria, Queens, and I need to be home. I need those steady hours to do the candle shop, And his fiance's name is Tanya. She took his last name to Villanueva. They never got to get married. And he's like, "Yeah, I'm going to FD." So I'm like, "Oh shit, that's a great move," because a lot of cops went over to the fire department, and was going to help him with his personal business. Yeah. And the next time I saw his face was September 12th. I was looking at the New York Post, and they listed the missing, and his face was among the missing. And he never made it out. They never found him. They buried his helmet. Yeah.
Oh my God.
There's a movie called Rebirth, and it's about his fiance's story, Tanya.
Wow.
It's 4 stories, and his story is one of the stories. But I mean, you talk about, that's why when I got to the JTTF, it was so important to me when I got to the Terrorism Task Force, because it resonated so much with me because I lost friends there. And Sergio, while we weren't the closest of friends, it hurt me because I knew the caliber of man that they took, right?
Yeah.
And all the plans that he had. And I mean, I posted pictures of him on my social media. The guy was just dynamic. I mean, and to think that he died that way, the way he put us with our pants down, I mean, it hurts. It hurts, you know. So, so it's tough.
No. Yeah, I don't think anyone, unless you're like, were you or any of the other officers there or people there that day will ever understand. Like, simple as that.
And we've had,
and I hope they never do.
We've had over 4,000 people dying now from 9/11 related illness. So we have more people dead from 9/11 illness than were killed on that day. So, you know, and it continues. It continues. Everybody's having health issues. I've had a few. My wife's had. You know, we're all having issues from it. You know, it's catching up to us the older we get. So
wow. Well, thank you for sharing that. I appreciate it. I'm like, oh.
I'm a crybaby, by the way. So
I cried too. It's okay. I'm a crybaby too. But you know what? It's good because real people cry. Real men cry. Oh, okay. That was my next question, actually, about like losing friends and coworkers on this job and how they impact your outlook on life. I mean, does it change the way you look at life?
Yeah, I mean, so my first partner, Francis Vasile, committed suicide in 1996, in January of 96. And he was, I named my daughter after her because she introduced me and my ex-wife on a blind date. So
wow.
When she died, I got married in October of 96, and I told her parents, they came to my wedding, my first wedding. And I told her parents that if I had a daughter, I was going to name her after her. And I did. Well, my daughter's name is Frances because my first partner was Francis. That was the most impactful. So 2 of the 3 worst days of my life, one was September 11th and one was when she took her life. Because, and you know this as a cop, right? You go to the scene of a tragedy and you see people thrown on the floor, they're screaming because their kid is killed or their spouse was killed or one of their homies was killed or whatever. And you see them on the floor. And I remember as a cop, I would go to these scenes. I'd be like, why are these people on the floor? Like, why are they screaming? Like, why do they throw themselves? And when I walked into that funeral home and I saw her in her casket, in her uniform, I fell to the floor. And I know, you know, you can relate because of Allah. God rest her. But I fell to the floor. And 4 people had to carry me to the casket to pay my respects. Everything left my body. So I've known Sean McDonald wasn't my personal friend, but we went to the academy together. He was the first one that was killed out of my academy class. But losing Francis to suicide, that was the worst thing for me on the job.
Was there any like signs? Did you have any idea?
So she was going through a lot of like, you know, marital issues, and then she started dating a cop from the precinct, and she was drinking a lot. I mean, hindsight's 20/20, right? We always say that. And I mean, when I think about it, yes, there were signs, but at the time it was just like, you know, part of the subculture of policing. Like people go out and they drink, they act like nothing's wrong.
And
they end up, you know, fooling around and whatever was happening. So I didn't see it at the time, but hindsight, and it's because the day it happened, there was a huge snowstorm the beginning of the week. She died January 11th, 1996. There was a huge snowstorm in the beginning of the week. And I had to take the train into work. And I remember walking, and we were having this big like community affairs dinner at one of the local places. And I remember getting in there to the precinct. And I was coming in, and I was going to sign in and do what I had to do. And then I was going to stop by this luncheon. And she was leaving. and she was working. She had gotten an inside spot, and she was working for the lieutenant doing paperwork. And I used to always tell her I loved her all the time. When I saw her, I used to be, I used to tell her, I fucking love you. Like, why'd you introduce me to her? I should have married you. Like, I used to mess with her, And she had really big boobs, so I was always messing with her about her boobs, right? So, and she would always, and I'm going to say it because it's not a derogatory term. She would always say I was such a faggot. She would tell me all the time, right? That was her thing. That's what she was saying.
Yeah, because you're messing with her, so she,
yeah. Well, and then she told me she loved me too, and then that was it. And that morning I walked in, and I was like, "What's up, baby?" I remember like it was I'm like, "What's up, baby? What are you doing?" Because she was Italian, but she spoke fluent Spanish, right?
Oh wow.
Yeah, she grew up in Ridgewood, Queens, by Bushwick. She spoke fluent Spanish and fluent Italian. So I said something to her in Spanish, and she just looked at me. And I was like, "What's up?" And she's like, "I'm good." And I was like, "I love you." And she was like, "I love you too." And
oh my God.
6 hours later, she's dead.
Oh my God.
Yeah, it was bad. It was bad. And there was a lot of suspicious circumstances about how it happened. And she took her boyfriend's gun and did it. And it was just, it was a lot. So, I mean, I don't want to get into that, but it was kind of a rabbit hole for me. But it was bad. It was bad.
It's like one of the things I like to talk about on here, because I feel like it's a taboo subject, especially like suicide and stuff. But like, in the end of the day, like we're one of the jobs that end up committing suicide more than other jobs because of like the traumas that we experience and the traumas that we see. And it's a reality. And it's like you said, like, oh, the first person out of the gate who got shot from the academy. This is my first partner who committed suicide. This is the first person I remember like really hitting me hard that I fell to the ground, like I only have 6 years and I can relate to everything that you said, which is a scary example of the things that this job can do to you, but it's the truth.
Absolutely.
Because I remember one summer I had 2 of my academy classmates shot, and then my other academy classmate in a shooting within like 3 months of each other, and just from my 25-person class. And it's like, when they say that shit in the academy, you're like, hey, like someone's gonna die here, and you're like, okay, it's fucking true.
It is. It is. We had 1,400 people in my academy class.
Oh shit, I had 135. But I'm talking my whole room alone. Oh, I know. Yeah.
It's we lost. My class lost a lot of people. We had a lot of people shot and killed in the line of duty.
Yeah.
Kevin Gillespie was another one. He was a street crime guy. He got killed in the 4-6. I mean, we had a lot of people. We had a lot of people die. And it's it's what we deal with, right? And people think that we're robots, and we're not.
And we're not.
We lose our friends. We lose. I mean, I know, and I don't want to. I'm certainly not trying to prod you on it, but I know the loss of Ella did so much for you, just as a person. The impact that made on you, because you guys were like, buddies, you were besties.
Yeah.
Anybody who knows you and follows you on social media knows how much she meant to you. And, that
wearing a bracelet right now. My Ella bracelet I wear every single day. I have her tattooed on me. Yeah. But like when you said, like when you heard about your friend, how you fell to the ground, I talked to my friend who was there that day, and she told me that I fell to the ground, and I was like, no, I didn't. She's like, Haley, you fell to the ground and I picked you up and I caught you. She's like, you don't remember? And I'm like, no, I don't remember that at all.
I remember.
This shit changes your life for the rest of your life. I mean, I will never ever be the same person, ever.
No, you won't. And I remember when Ella was killed, because one of the first things that came out was that she was married, and there was a picture that she had kids, and then there was a picture of her holding a dog.
Yeah.
And they were like, oh, she adopted the dog and brought it home to her kids. And then I was like, and I remember on social media, because I do this a lot, I would tell people, pump the brakes. Like, why do you always have to be the bearer of bad news first? Like, let it get out the right way. Let Chicago PD give a conference. Let the things come out. You know,
that was
our
so
partner was
frustrating.
shot too, right? So it's like there was a lot going on, right? So, and I remember like it was yesterday, and it was even before I met you on social media.
Yeah, and the media is so fucked because
gosh.
she wasn't married and she didn't have kids. They were spitting out these fake narratives and fake pages to get money on her behalf or make it sound sadder than it already was. And it's like people are just sick. And then my whole mindset was switched to like defending her on the internet and doing all I can. And then I'm not even grieving because I'm like, this isn't true. Like, stop spitting this narrative, or like, don't donate to this page. And I'm getting message after message. Is this a real page? Is this a real GoFundMe? Like every 5 minutes, you know, and I'm like having to do all this stuff. And it was,
it was horrible. I know.
It was horrible. It was horrible. Okay, let's move on. Okay. Ugh. You're a husband and a father. How do you keep your family a priority, or how did you as well with like a crazy schedule? And I feel like you're a lot like me, where like when you have 5 seconds to sit down, you're going to start a new job or start a new business or something. Like the other day, my fiance took a nap and I started a new business because I was bored for an hour. I feel like you can relate, you know? So how do you balance doing all the things that you do and then keeping your family together and connected?
So thankfully, right. So as I said, my first marriage ended in divorce, but my kids, I had my son was 3 and my daughter was almost 7 when I got divorced the first time. The only time, thank God. But I was a constant, right? Because growing up, I didn't have my dad. So, and I said this to my father. He taught me the most important lesson in my life. He taught me how not to be as a divorced dad. He taught me not to disappear. He taught me not to go be a rolling stone and just chase whatever he was chasing. I was a constant in my kids' lives. I met my current wife on the job. She was also a detective. We met when I was a detective and she was a cop. And my stepson, who was 13 at the time, I call him mine. He has his father, you know, but I love the kid with all my heart. He just turned 31 yesterday. So,
oh my God, he's my age.
Yeah. Love the kid, and he's a police officer and stuff.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, he's a good kid. But I was always paying child support and just life. I was always chasing the carrot, so I never stopped. I was working, and then I would do side jobs. I did bodyguard work. I worked for a few celebrities. I was driving when the Jacob Javits, the car show, would come to New York, the auto show. I would drive the executives and GM. I would drive them around for, you know, a week or so. I would drive around their wives. I would drive around. There was a billionaire from Detroit. I used to drive his daughters when they would come into the city to shop. So I was always chasing a carrot. And then as I got older, I started doing the joint. When I was in the JTTF, I was doing the Yankee games as a side job, you know, paid detail. So, but I kept it together mainly because of her, right? She was always, you know, she kept me grounded. When I was broke, she was buying my kids gifts. She was, you know, taking care of the house. She was doing things. When I first got divorced and I was sleeping on my aunt's couch, and then I ended up getting an apartment. You know, I was broke, but I was always doing stuff for my children.
Yeah.
So I kept it together because I made myself understand that work is work, and you have to come home and drop it all at the threshold and be dad.
Yeah.
That's how I made it work.
Peace should be at home and chaos should be left at work.
Yeah, definitely. I don't want to bring that trauma. It was like with all the COVID stuff, right? People would come home, then the nurses would come home with the cops, and you would like basically strip at the door. That was what I did emotionally.
Yes.
At home. I stripped at the door, and I didn't want to bring the contamination into the house, so I left it at the door. That's how I did it.
And I think a lot of people want to do that, but they struggle with it, you know?
Oh, yeah.
But it's something that you have to work for, you know, every day. But I do think that like the way you grew up has clearly played a role in the way you show up as a father.
Yeah.
Um,
Thank you.
yeah. So how did you become a news media contributor? Like, how did this happen for you?
So it's a funny story. I have so many funny stories. But
I probably could talk to you for like 8 hours. So
it's not funny. It's like funny ironic. So January 9th is National Law Enforcement Appreciation Day. Right?
Yeah.
So every January 9th, Chelsea Manning, who was a defector in the United States Army, who ended up getting a sex change in the United States Army, and then Obama traded. It was just, so Bo Burgle was the other one. But anyway, Chelsea Manning ended up becoming this leftist, crazy person. Changed his gender, became a transvestite, whatever. Neither here nor there. But every January night, he would put out a tweet saying, fuck the police. That was his thing, like January night. And if you historically search his he blocked me. But if you historically search his profile, fuck the police was every January night.
Wow. Okay.
So January night, 2019, he put out the fuck the police tweet. And I answered back, and I had probably 2,000 followers at the time on Twitter.
Yeah.
I answered back, call us if you need us, we'll still come help you. Doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Right? That's it.
I love it. I love it.
And Fox News somehow saw that tweet. So a lot of people retweeted it. It went viral.
Yes.
And then Fox News got a wind of it. So they called me and they were like, look, they reached out to me on Twitter and they're like, look, we want you to come into the studio and talk about, police and police work and why you said that to him, even though he said what he said.
Yeah.
So I'm like, okay, I'll do it. Right. So whatever, I got a face for radio, but I'll try. So, and then the not so funny part, the tragic part is January 10th, the morning of January 10th, when I'm supposed to go into Fox News Studios, Natalie Corona, who was a police officer in California, a rookie cop, she was on a bike and she drove up to MVA. And as she was she was on patrol. She drove up to an MVA and a guy on a bike rode up behind her and executed her, shot her in the back of the head.
Remember.
She was the girl who took the picture with the blue flag with a blue dress. Yeah. Aqua blue dress.
Yeah.
Beautiful young girl. Her dad was a cop in Aurora, California.
Yeah. I remember that.
So she gets executed. So that morning. So now I'm in this limo on my way down to Fox Studios, and the producer calls me and is like, scratch the Chelsea Manning shit. We're going to talk about the war on police in this country.
Wow.
And how it started. So I'm like, okay, like I had preparation. I'm just like, all right, I'm going to be in the studio in 40 minutes.
Holy shit.
I get to the studio, and they put me on Fox News, and I'm there at 5 o'clock in the morning live, and they start, talking about the war on police in America. And that's how I started my advocacy. So once I did that hit, they started calling me back, and then I got Newsmax, and then I had Univision calling me, Telemundo, and other places. That's how it started. I
love how you are unapologetically outspoken, but I also love how you're not always on the cop side. And I respect that because you speak the truth, and you're not like one of those cops that defend cops even when they're wrong. And your tagline is no one hates a good cop. Am I saying this right? A bad cop more than a good cop. Yes. Right. No one hates a bad cop more than a good cop.
That's my mantra.
Yeah. And I love that you are just like you always just say like what's the right thing. Like at least my morals and like what I believe in a lot with what you think. Which I think that's why you're so great as a public speaker and like on the news, because you're not a one-sided like argument. You're really not. Yeah. You do flex and you do hear other sides and you're flexible. Whereas like some people are so like, nope, I did the right thing. And you're not like that. No one is above reproach, in my opinion. Right. So, and it's,
our voices as police advocates aren't going to resonate with people if we're full of shit, right? If all we do is blindly back the blue, and then when they screw up, we say, oh, well, it was more to the story. But then when we see somebody else do some shit, we immediately want to jump down their throat. You can't have it both ways.
Yeah.
Right? In Spanish, they say, te va peinado, te va a hacer rolo. You're going to either brush your hair or you're going to put rollers in it. You can't do both, right? So that's the thing. So in order to be, and it's not virtue signaling, it's the truth. If you're not telling the truth and calling out the bad ones, then nobody's going to listen when you are defending the good ones.
Yes, I agree. And that's why I think that you have something special. And do you see yourself continuing to do more news contributing in the future?
I am. I kind of slowed down. I had a podcast and it kind of slowed down because my partner's still on the job and we had to be careful what we were saying. But yeah, I mean, listen, any chance I get, I'll do it. Any chance, when they call me, I go on. I was on Newsmax a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah.
I jump on or the radio a lot. Whatever I can, because now my son is on the job, right? So it's a different thing for me, right? Because knowing that the anti-police rhetoric and the vitriol is now endangering his life.
Yes.
Because when it was me, oh, well, I'm going to deal with it. Like I'm rocking and rolling. I'm running the streets. I'm doing my thing. I was a super cop by any stretch of the imagination, but, I had over 900 arrests. I was in 2 shootings. I delivered 2 babies. I mean, I was rocking and rolling out there, right? So I was doing my thing. And then I did terrorism for 7 years. So I went through all gamuts. I worked homicide. I worked sex crimes, as a detective. And so I was rocking and rolling. I didn't give a shit. Now that my son's a cop, it's like, hold on a second. The celebrities who put out this shit without context and who shit on the cops immediately, and who now you're endangering my son's life. Yeah. So now it's personal for me.
Yeah, it's like a different.
Yeah.
You feel a different type of responsibility to stand up, like even more than you felt before.
And that's why when. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No. I was just gonna say it's a lot like my father. He's very similar to you. He does corporate security stuff now too. I mean, he's basically you copy paste but Chicago version, Italian version. But I do feel like once I became a cop, stuff became more personal to him too. And he's like, you guys need more people who are retired to be standing up for you guys, and like you, like going on the news and like speaking out, and like where is your like leadership when shit hits the fan? Why is nobody defending you guys? Like where is the like what's the blue line? Only when someone dies? Like it's
and your old superintendent Brown, he was one of the first people that followed me on Twitter. He followed me back like immediately. He still follows me on Twitter.
When he was in Dallas, probably. No, in Chicago? Oh, he was in Chicago. Oh, you're right, because he was my superintendent.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, he was one of the first big accounts. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Wow. So, I mean, it was, again, right, it's personal for me now because of my kid. But that being said, look, if cops do bad shit, in order to protect my son as well, because he's not a bad cop,
right?
I got to kill out those bad cops and say, hey, don't take your anger out on every cop, right? I mean, I say it all the time. You're talking about 850,000 or so sworn law enforcement officers in this country. If you take the numbers, go to a mall and pick out 100 people. 95 of them are good people, good, honest, hardworking folks, and you're gonna have 5 that are a piece of shit. Yeah, so it's the same thing. And now 850,000. I'm not a math major, but you take 5% of 850,000. It's not a lot, but it's a lot.
Yeah,
right. So it doesn't speak to the profession, because most of us go to do our job with the best of intentions, and honestly, and without prejudice, and that's police work.
Yeah, there's mad apples everywhere.
Everywhere.
It's just that we get more press and more bad press.
That's it.
So, what goals do you have for in the future? And tell us a little bit about this business that you have started.
So my goal is basically, so I'm going to be 54, right? I'm getting old. I was.
Oh, Mike's 16. He's picking. So you have at least 6 more years to be gigging.
Yeah, and that's my plan. I want to do another 6 more years till I'm 60. Then I'm going to reevaluate.
Yeah.
I think I'm going to retire for good. I'll have another pension, my second pension.
There you go.
And then I'm going to I'm going to do more into the advocacy, more into the podcast stuff, more into just, continuing my stuff on social media and just advocating for the cops and trying to be a voice of reason. I'm going to move out of New York. I'm not going to stay here. I mean,
I was wondering that.
I don't want to. I mean, listen, life comes at you fast. I don't know.
Yeah.
My plans right now are to get out of New York because I feel like it's just too much. I'm blessed. I have a beautiful home. I have a lot of property. I have 10 acres in Orange County, New York. I could sell my house now for almost triple than what I paid for it. But, I'm waiting. I'm working. I'm still doing my thing with corporate security. I have a great group of investigators that work for me, that work with me. My director's a retired FBI, ASAC. So we're rocking and rolling. It's almost like having a little police department on our own.
Yeah.
Yeah, we do investigations. We do active shooter stuff. So that's, I'm going to reassess at 60, but I think I'm going to pack it in at 60 and just kind of try to.
So you think? We'll see. Probably not.
Exactly. I tell my daughter-in-law, I'm like, I need a grandkid. She's like, whoa, Pop, take it easy. She's like, you got a dog here. We got a grandpop.
Yeah. My dad says the same thing. He's like, give me something to fucking do besides work. Jesus Christ.
I have my grandniece. She's going to be 5, or she just turned 5. And she's like the most beautiful little, sassy little smart. I mean, I love her so much. And she's such a good kid. I was just we were just celebrating her birthday last weekend. So she comes over, like yesterday she was here, but I was at work, so I couldn't see her. So, but they live close by.
Yeah.
I love her. I love having her around. I'm a big mush for kids.
Where do you think you'd move if you left New York? You think it'd be Florida? Or you think no?
No, there's too many retired cops and
there is
too many Puerto Ricans down.
I'm pretty sure New York has taken over Florida.
Exactly.
Everyone's from New York.
No, it's too
everyone. Okay.
I want to. So I enjoy the 4 seasons, but I want winter. I want a nice winter. I don't want a New York winter or a Chicago winter. I want a nice winter. So I'm thinking Tennessee, like Eastern Tennessee.
Oh, that would be nice. Or the Carolinas are nice.
Yeah, the Carolinas are nice, but so the Carolinas got a lot of skeeters. I don't like mosquitoes. So I have nice, sweet Puerto Rican blood, and they eat my ass up. So Tennessee doesn't have a lot of skeeters.
Yeah, that would be good. Tennessee.
Yeah, I think I'm thinking Eastern Tennessee. Yeah, well, we'll see.
We'll see.
Yeah. Maybe I'll end up in like Timbuktu. I don't know. Okay.
I want to get some of these questions from my followers to you before I let you go, because I know you're busy as shit. Okay. One person said, do you have any advice for a 5-year law enforcement officer who is struggling? Should I leave or should I stick it out?
So when I retired, I had 22 and a half years on the job, right? And I knew it was time to go. It was just, the writing was on the wall for me. I had this second offer, this job offer from the private sector. I was going to be able to leverage it into something. So I knew it was time to go. Now, in this instance, being with 5 years on the job, this is something that this person is going to have to look within themselves, because what I always tell cops nowadays, and I say to my own son, is you have to keep the oath, as corny as it sounds, the oath, you have to keep it in the front of your brain, right? When you took the job, you didn't take it because you were going to be praised. You didn't take it because you were going to get rich. You didn't take it because you were going to become a celebrity. You took it to help kids, the elderly, and people, for the most part, who needs our help, right? The weaker victims, so to speak, not weaker, but the victims. So that person that asked this question, what I would say to them is look at the changes that you're making, or the changes that you could possibly make, whether it be in your community or within the job itself. And you have to take a step back and say, am I loving this, or am I going to love it, or is it just taking too much from me? Now, if it's taking too much from you, then, you got to do what you got to do for your mental health.
Yeah. I like that. Like, keep the oath at the forefront, and like to feel like you're not like upholding that oath or you can't anymore, then it's just time to go.
Yeah. I mean, and it's from the point of being miserable, or from the point of not doing your job at all, for the point of becoming abusive also to the community, because that never ends well.
Right.
So those are the three kind of pillars where you got to keep it into perspective of, should I stay on this job?
Yeah.
Or should I go?
Yeah. Another question that says, I'm a retired officer and I feel a lack of purpose. Any advice for me?
So, keep working, right? I mean, go. I mean, look, and I don't want to say it like it's, because it's a good question. Some people, when they retire, they don't know what to do. They just, because like me, right? I was a cop when I was 21. So it was essentially half my life I was a police officer. So when I left, thank God, I knew what I was going to do. But I mean, I'll tell, what I used to tell my son, when my youngest son, when he was bored, go volunteer at a soup kitchen, go cut the grass of elderly people. And as a police officer, listen, network with the cops, with the local law enforcement, and see if you can help them in any way. If you can talk about your experiences to the rookies, if you could go to a BOCES program and speak to kids at a school, if you could help at the school and become an SRO, there's numerous things you can do. I think that the most important thing is a retired law enforcement officer. And again, this is generational stuff. It depends. I mean, if you're in your 70s, then the ship is sailed, to be honest with you. But if you're in your 40s, or your 50s, you could kind of still relate to these kids. And it's important for them to hear your experiences and to talk to them.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. I see a lot of like stuff in Chicago, especially too, and I'm sure it's all over, but there's like a lot of retired cops that have been committing suicide. Because it's like, they feel like they have nothing left. Like you said, like if they started the job really young or older, whatever, it's all they know. And then are all of a sudden like not working, and they feel like a loss, almost like
they lose their sense of purpose.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I like what you said though. Like find, like if you loved working with the community as a police officer, like do something with the community. If you loved like protecting people, like do your like a security gig or whatever. Like you don't need necessarily be doing something that makes money. You can volunteer at a dog shelter, walk dogs, like anything.
And a big demographic of society that gets ignored are the elderly folks, the real elderly folks, right? So as a police officer, as a detective, I do it now in my current role, right? I talk to them about how to not get scammed, right? Don't fall victim to a scam. Just, you take that experience and go, you don't have to get paid for it. To your point, you can volunteer, you can go sit at an old age home and say, hey, be careful of this, be careful of that, get some literature, do some stuff and work with the cops.
Yeah. I love that.
A lot of things.
Okay. Can you tell us more about the FBI Terrorist Task Force?
So, when I got there in 2007, I hit the ground running. I had a case in 2008. I got there December of 07, and in 2008, I want to say April, I got my first case, which was called, what ended up being called Operation Rapid Return. It was a Palestinian kid from Staten Island, this kid Abdelhamid Shahada. Him and his three buddies were training to join Al-Qaeda.
Wow.
His two buddies kind of chickened out. He kept going with it. He got radicalized by Anwar al-Awlaki online. He got radicalized really quick. He was 19 at the time, or 18. He was going up to Bear Mountain doing war games, like pistol stuff. Like he got really super radicalized. He ended up, we had an undercover into him who posed as an army recruiter, because once he figured out that he was too dumb to get to like Afghanistan, his thing was he was going to join the military and do an insider attack and kill U.S. troops, like Major Nadal Hassan did. I don't know, Nadal Hassan did in Texas. I don't know if you remember that. He was a doctor that ended up killing a bunch of soldiers in Texas in the army.
Wow.
So he was going to do this type of stuff. We had to recruit him into him. He got burned. We had surveillance on him. Somehow he ended up in Hawaii. I can't talk about a lot how he did it because it's still classified. But he basically circumvented the no-fly list, and he ended up in Hawaii. So poor little old me, I had to go to Hawaii to go.
Oh, that's so cool.
I had to go do wiretaps, and I went with an analyst from the bureau, my partner who was an FBI agent. Went out there. Long story short, I got him to give up the whole plot, and he ended up getting 16 years in prison for the plot. And then, as that investigation was going, myself and my team were responsible. We were the case agents, the New York case agents, for the Najibullah Azazi case, which was Operation High Rise, which was Najibullah Azazi was the guy from Denver. He was Afghanistan. He was Afghani. He owned a coffee cart in down by Wall Street. Him and 3 of his friends went to Waziristan to an Al Qaeda training camp. They met the number 2 of Al Qaeda, and they came back and they were going to do a coordinated suicide attack on 3 subway cars in New York City on 9/11/2009. And we foiled. It was Osama bin Laden's last plot against the United States before he was killed. So they got direct orders from the number 2 of Al Qaeda, who got it from Osama bin Laden, and they were going to kill numerous people. And excuse me. Of course, sorry. They were going to blow up these subways, and myself and my team were responsible for foiling that plan. And my guy, so it was Najibullah Azazi, Zareen Ahmadzai, and Adis Lagujanin. My guy was Adis Lagujanin. He was Bosnian. He got radicalized online also. He ended up him and Zareen Ahmadzai got 95 years plus 2 life sentences in Supermax prison for the plot. They did the whole thing. They made a fake story that they were going to get a wedding, and they passed through the Khyber Pass in the upper tribal area of Afghanistan. They went into Waziristan. We ended up eliminating the training camp after we got intel. A couple of drones later. So it was a lot, but that was the biggest thing. I got the Attorney General's Award for Exceptional Merit from the Attorney General at the time, was Rob Holder. That's the highest award given to any law enforcement officer in the country.
Wow.
Department of Justice. So I hit the ground running. I had those 2 hot cases, and that basically was my first 4 years in the JTTF. I was running around doing that stuff. And then I also taught a course at Quantico at the FBI Academy.
Oh, that's really cool.
Yeah, I did a little bit of work there. And I got there. It was luck. It's a whole other story that we can save for another time. But I got to the JTTF and I hit the ground running. And it was amazing work. And our office was about 4 miles from ground zero. So it kept the mission in perspective.
Right. I think they'll have to have you back. And we'll have to talk more, stories. Like, I'm sure you have the coolest stories, but I think it's cool for people to hear that you can be a police officer and you can put people away for 95 years. And you could also love just being a beat cop with your community, from your story. It's you can do save a million lives on the New York subway, and you can just inspire a little kid from the Bronx to become a cop. Yeah. You can really do it all. And I think that's
it was good.
The best part of being a cop.
That's fantastic. Yeah.
Or for time's sake, do you have any final takeaways that you can leave with us for anyone who's listening?
So for the law enforcement, I'm going to give a piece of advice, and I've given this piece of advice I used to give it to rookies, and I'll give it to all law enforcement officers that are watching this and listening. Treat people with dignity, treat people with respect. Do not embarrass people. And my big thing was, and I'm going to show my names, but I used to always tell them, don't embarrass them in front of their lady, don't embarrass them in front of their homeboys, and don't embarrass them in front of their kids, because they're going to fight. It doesn't matter what happens, they're going to fight you. They're going to feel like a cornered rat, and they're going to fight. So treat people with dignity and respect. Always give them an out, right? My thing was, if I was in a car stop and a guy was mouthing off, and it was tactically sound, I would get him out of the car, right? I would ask him to step out of the vehicle, right? And once they got out and they saw my size, I would put my arm around his shoulders and I would kind of lean on him a little bit and tell him, listen, I'm going to fuck you up. I'm going to get all up in your ass and I'm going to beat the shit out of you in front of your wife and in front of your kids. And you're going to leave me no choice. So let's tone it back down a little bit. Do what I'm asking of you. And you're likely going to go home without a summons or without any trouble. But if you could say you're fuck with me, I'm going to get up in your ass. So that was my big thing. Now, obviously things are different nowadays, but the core message is treat people with dignity and respect, and don't treat people how you would want not only your mother treated, but your kids, right?
Yeah.
That's it. I mean, it's as simple as that. If you keep that in mind, as corny as it sounds, you're going to go a long way because you're going to have a mechanism. You're going to develop a mechanism where you're going to be able to switch off your stupidity or you taking shit personal. Something's going to click and you're going to be like, hold on a second. What if this was my kid? Now, listen, there are people that deserve what they get. But at the end of the day, I feel like if you go into it, treating people with dignity and respect, you're going to get a lot more out of it than you would, more positive. So that's what I would say to law enforcement listening to this. And keep the mission and the oath at the forefront. Don't forget why you took the job.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
You're so welcome. It's a pleasure.
We're going to have to do a part 2, I think, one day.
I'm on any day. Let me know whenever you want.
Yeah.
Where's that handsome Leo? Where is he?
Oh, is he? He's. I'll grab him in a second.
I've always messed it on.
He's like, I want to do the podcast with you. I want to ask him questions. So
next time we'll set it up.
Yeah.
Next time we'll set it up. Yeah, we'll talk.
And where can we find you online? If
so my handle on X, that's I have about 40,000.
Oh, on X. Okay, yes, I forgot.
Yeah. Big Rican Man, that's me, right? Big Rican Man. And on Instagram is also Big Rican Man, or just search me by name, Angel Maysonet.
Yes. Thank you so much. I'm going to end the recording now. Thanks for being here. Appreciate all your time.